Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marble Snap video. All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marble Snap video. So in this one, we have a bit of an update to the best September Spotlight weeks. Now, covered this about a week or so ago. Overall, I think a lot of the things I said in the prior video are still true. However, there have been some pretty big developments, which I think has changed how some people may value the different Spotlight weeks. So I wanted to do a quick update and talk about that, how things have changed a bit. Also show off the October Spotlights too, because I think it's really important when you're making your decisions about which Spotlights you want to be going for in a given month. I think you should always have that next month in mind, because you get unlucky on a Spotlight and it ends up taking you 4 Spotlights to get that one card you're wanting, or that one thing in specific, then you're basically down like a whole month's worth of Spotlights. So I think being able to plan out at least a month ahead of time is rather important. So we'll show the October ones at the end, but let's talk a little bit about the September ones again really quick. Not going to go over the cards again. You can read them here if you don't know them. We went over them last time, but there have been some pretty big changes. So let's talk about those changes real quick. Also worth mentioning, we finally figured out what that last mystery card was for the final week from September 26th to the 2nd of October, and that is High Evolutionary, making another appearance alongside Mobius and Kang. So, what are the things that really impacted the game in a way where I think you might want to prioritize things a little bit differently? So there are two main things. One, Loki. Loki is busted. Loki is, in my opinion, the most broken season pass card we have had since pre-nerf Zabu, and anyone who was around for that meta knows just how absurd mana cheating can be, and Loki often ends up giving that same kind of overpowered feeling of being able to play way too many cards for too cheap, especially in combination with Quinjet. I will not be surprised when this card gets nerfed within the next month, but for the time being, it is a defining force of the metagame, and as such, it's kind of adjusted how we can view some of the other cards here. I think now, contextually, it makes a lot of sense why they made Mobius as strong as he is, because they knew Loki was going to be ridiculously busted, so they had to print a busted counter card to try and offset how ridiculously strong this new pass card is. But we already knew Mobius was going to be really, really good regardless of Loki being good or not. However, how this has changed things, in my opinion, is its impact on cards like Alioth and Ravonna. Alioth is a card I think a lot of people were excited for, thought it could have a pretty big impact. However, with how things have changed and the dominance of Loki in the metagame, I think Alioth is no longer a card you want to be getting until things significantly change in the balance department. Taking a whole turn to play this card, even though the effect is powerful, just doesn't seem like it's going to be enough in the context of the other popular decks that are going around right now. And I think the biggest downside of this card now is the fact that if you're up against a Loki deck, they're just going to steal your Alioth and use it against you for cheaper cost. And it turns out when you make a 6-drop only cost 4 or 5, it gets a lot better, especially when you can cheat other reduced cost cards in alongside it. This is compounded by the fact that Loki decks often are putting out a lot of power in the early game, so they're often ahead going into the final turns. So if they're using your Alioth against you, they could blow up your Alioth with their copy of your Alioth before yours even gets revealed and is able to do its thing. So yeah, overall, I really don't think Alioth is going to be making the cut anytime soon. Alioth will be returning to Spotlight caches later on in November, but I think for the time being, in the context of how the metagame is currently developing, it's not really a card I would spend tokens on as someone who was previously planning on buying it. However, that doesn't mean opening the Alioth week isn't really worth it. Actually, I think the Alioth week, in spite of Alioth getting worse in the context of Loki, has actually gotten better overall because now Snowguard is in it. And people would have laughed if you said this a month ago, but Snowguard is now like one of the best 1-drops in the game, especially in combination with Loki. But even not with Loki, the card is just very powerful. Getting a 1-drop down that gets you 2/3s with pretty solid effects is generally very good. And the fact that it is the best card generation you can have for things like Loki and the Collector as a 1-drop, there's just no other card that does something as effective as what it does. We've also seen just how powerful being able to interact with locations is with Legion. So the Snowguard Bear and the Hawk being able to shut down a location, or trigger location again has been pretty impactful. I think that's a great change overall. I'm happy they took a card that was probably the most memed on and useless card in the game, or at least one of them, and made it an actually relevant and fun card to play. So props to them for that change, and I do think it gives more value to the Alioth week, where Snowguard was kind of the card you didn't want to hit before, but now I would argue it's actually the most meta-relevant card out of the 3 cards listed here. Hitmonkey is still a good pull as well, though he's mainly seeing play in Sarah and Bounce decks, and those currently aren't as popular right now. And even though I don't think Alioth will be good right now because of the Loki meta, I would be surprised if this card didn't end up finding a home somewhere pretty powerful later down the line when changes have happened to the game. Then the Ravonna week. So Ravonna, I think, was widely regarded as probably the weakest of the bunch, but there's still some pretty powerful interactions you can have with her here. Honestly, kind of crazy to me that she got the minimum one and Loki didn't, but oh well. The thing with Ravonna is people will probably mess around with her for a week, and then Mobius is going to come out as the Loki counter to shut down his mana reduction shenanigans, and Ravonna's going to be caught right in the crosshairs. She is not nearly as well statted of a card for the effect, and she's also much more narrow in the cards that she does affect. Those can be powerful if you build your deck around it. The fact that you're at risk of having your whole card interaction, the fact that you're at risk of having your whole card's text invalidated just by one tech card that is probably going to be very popular and slot into probably as many decks as we've seen Jeff slot into in recent months, means that I think this card is going to be kind of dead on arrival, at least when Mobius releases the following week. I hope I'm wrong about this, but as long as Mobius is going to be around as a consistent counter to Loki decks, I can't imagine a world where Ravonna ends up seeing significant play in any competitive style deck. And then the Mobius week has actually just got better to open if you're lacking high evolutionary. Kang is a bit of a bust. I don't think he's the worst card to get a hold of, as I'm pretty sure they're going to rework the card eventually since it sees like no play at all. But high evolutionary is very, very good. In fact, it's one of the few decks that still is kind of putting up a relatively okay fight against Loki, at least when they don't get the Turbo Nuts high rolls. But yeah, if you don't have high evolutionary and you're trying to get a hold of Mobius, looks like the final week of the month just got way more appealing. Now, one other thing I do want to mention about Mobius is, well, what if you have high evolutionary or you're not really as interested in that week because you don't want to get Kang? Well, there is another option. They're doing something here that I don't think they've really done ever before, and shortly after this card is releasing, actually just a few days after it leaves Spotlight rotation, there's going to be a bundle releasing containing a variant for Mobius. Now, it's not a cheap bundle by any means. This is a 7,500 gold bundle, and given the rates of gold, that's almost a $100 bundle. But I know there have been a lot of players who have been saving their gold for a long time because a lot of the gold offerings haven't been the greatest, and I think this one generally ends up being pretty enticing if you have that gold saved up. Now, you get 10,000 credits along with it. If you're buying credits at the normal shop price rate, that ends up being 8,000 gold for 10k credits, so you save 500 gold on the credits, and you get these variants for Mobius and the Enchantress. Now, if you were going to buy Mobius for tokens and you were going to spend that 3,000 tokens, it's kind of like you're getting a little bit above rate on credits and 3,000 tokens thrown into the bundle. Now, obviously, you will still get the normal Mobius at some point, so that is worth factoring into your decision here, but getting the variant will let you play with the card immediately without having to spend any Spotlight caches or your collector's tokens. So while I'm sure this option won't be available for everybody due to the high price of the bundle, it is something worth considering if that week doesn't look as appealing to you, but you still want to pick up Mobius and you've been saving gold for a while. And then to close it out, I wanted to show our graphic here for the October spotlights. Now, I'm not going to do a super in-depth breakdown of what I think is the best or the worst here, as I think this is going to change in time in terms of context of the meta, in terms of how Mobius ends up impacting the meta, if Loki ends up getting nerfed, whatever other things happen in the OTA changes. I think it's a bit too far out to really judge how good or bad these weeks are, but I think it's important to keep them in mind, and it's also important to keep in mind that all of the cards right now, data mined, are going to be launching at Series 5 in October. So they're not going to be as easy to acquire with collector's tokens if you're opting to not really go with the Spotlight system and instead just try to buy a card during a given week. It's also worth noting there are a lot of repeats here, which I think is going to sour some people on going for these particular weeks. Like if you went for some of the weeks last month, you might already have a decent amount of these cards, as we see a bunch of the cards that released in August, such as X-23, Lady Deathstrike, and Silver Samurai. The only card here that's actually showing up in spotlights for the first time, aside from brand new card releases, is the Phoenix Force. And, well, that card is often forgotten about and not exactly seeing a whole ton of play at the current moment. So yeah, just really good to keep these in mind. Of course, these are data mine things could change, but typically the spotlights haven't been really too different than what we've seen in the data mines in the past. And with most of these cards being Series 5, I think a lot of players are going to opt to rely on the Spotlight system for them. So I think you're better off this month just spending your tokens on the most impactful card, which looks to be Mobius, and then saving up those Spotlights for October, when hopefully the Loki meta has been reined in a bit, and you can get access to these interesting new cards. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. How are you liking the Loki season? Do you like it? Do you not like it? It's definitely been an experience so far. But I wanted to get this out there because I think the information is really important with spotlights, particularly this information about planning ahead. Because I think if you don't plan ahead and all of a sudden it's a new month and you find out that, well, I want Man-Thing and I only have 1 or 2 spotlights saved up, you might have a really bad time. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for the video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.